This is a novel I've been working on for a while, and of course it's 1968, and it's in a Scorthy. And what's happened is that Nora's husband has died, and a friend of hers has come to her to say that this woman in the town who really teaches piano to people wants to meet her and wants to train her so that she can enter a choir. Maybe it'd be good for her because she's a widow now, she's got to do new things, and maybe a choir would be good for her. And so she doesn't really want to do this, but she finds herself having to go because it was all arranged for her behind her back. And so it's, anyway, that's all really. So the woman who's the teacher is called Laurie O'Keefe, and her husband is called Billy O'Keefe. And Nora's husband who's died was called Morris, and he was a teacher. When Billy opened the door to her, he immediately asked her in, holding back a Labrador dog by the collar. The hallway was wide and dark, with old pictures on the wall. There was a smell of polish. Billy began to call downstairs for his wife, but as there was no reply, he shut the dog in the room on the left and began walking down the creaking staircase to the basement, motioning to Nora to remain in the hall. "She never hears me," he said, and seemed amused at the idea. While Nora waited, the dog began to bark. Soon Billy O'Keefe appeared again. "Come down," he said. "She says you are to come down." He led her down the narrow book-lined staircase and into a small tiled hallway which had some coats hanging on a set of hooks. He opened a door in the bright space which had been clearly added to the back of the old house. Laurie O'Keefe stood up from the piano. "Now Billy will make us tea, unless you want coffee," she said, "and biscuits, Billy, the nice ones I bought." She smiled at him as he closed the door. "It's only a baby grand," she said, as though Nora had asked her about the piano, "and of course I have another one there, just a plain old upright for the students to bang on." There was no other furniture in the room except a few old chairs. There was a rug on the floor and sheet music strewn about. The walls were painted white with prints of abstract paintings hanging at different heights. "We'll have our tea in here." Laurie led her into another room which had a sofa and easy chairs, a large stereo record player and speakers, and a large case from floor to ceiling full of records. "No one has any pity for a woman married to a man who is tone deaf," Laurie said. "No one." Nora did not know what this meant, or if she was expected to reply. "You know, there is something we've been meaning to say to you," Laurie went on. "I almost wrote you a letter when we sent you the mass card, but then I thought, no, I'd say it to you when I saw you." They both sat down on two armchairs. Nora looked out at the garden for a moment and then back at Laurie. "We were driving down from Dublin. We'd been away, all cousins and nieces and all that. And then we were driving back into the town, and it was such a lovely day and all the traffic was stopped. I don't know how long we were stopped in Blackstoops. We thought that there might have been an accident. It never struck us that it was a funeral. I don't know why. And eventually when I saw people walking, I pulled down the window and I asked someone what it was. Oh, we were shocked when they told us. We knew Morris was sick, but we were very shocked, and Billy said how good Morris had been to his boys in school and what a great teacher he was. And we thought that if we could do anything for you." "You're very kind," Nora said. And then Phyllis said, Phyllis being a mutual friend, and then Phyllis said, "I'm not sure my voice is up to much," Nora interrupted. "There's no better way to heal yourself than singing in a choir," Laurie said. "That is why God made music. You know, I had my own troubles, coming out of a convent at 50, and hardly a friend in the world, and it was the choir that got me started again. That was the one thing I had, my voice and the piano, although I trained first on the harpsichord. That was my first love." Billy came into the room with a tray. "And this," Laurie said, pointing to Billy, "I suppose will be my last love." "Do you mean me, Laurie?" said Billy. "I do, but you can leave us now. We have things to talk about." Billy put his finger to his lips and smiled at Nora and tiptoed out of the room. "You know, I sang for Nadia Boulanger," Laurie continued, "and one thing she said was that singing is not something you do, it is something you live. Wasn't that wise?" Nora nodded. doing nothing to indicate that she did not know who Nadia Boulanger was. She tried to remember the name so she could mention it to Phyllis. But I do have to get a feel for your voice before we set to work. Can you read music? Yes, I can, Nora said. Not well, mind you, but I learned years ago at school. It might be best to start with something you actually know. She went into the other room and came back with books of sheet music. Drink your tea and look through these and pick one you are familiar with. I'll go into the other room and play the piano. I can't think what to play, but something I love that I know from memory, and maybe the sound will warm us up. And I don't have a pupil until 4, so there's plenty of time. Nora wondered what had caused her to be in this strange house with this strange woman who could not stop talking. If there were a door out of this room into the garden, she thought, she would be tempted to go now, slip out as the piano music began to play, and walk slowly down the garden path and into Wafer Street and along the back road to her own house and never go out again. She sipped the tea and put down the cup and rested her head against the back of the chair. The music Laurie was playing was too fast and cluttered, she thought. Whoever wrote it had put in too many notes. It was a virtuoso piece, and she realised that Laurie was showing off and felt almost sorry for her that she would need to do this. It could hardly be what she did for relaxation. If Morris were alive now, she would delight in telling him what had happened, and he would say how right Billy O'Keefe was to get earplugs, so he would not have to hear as his second wife, the former nun, pounded the piano. Imagine being married to a former nun who played the piano. She could hear Morris's dry tone and see the look of pure amusement on his face. She flicked through the books of sheet music. Most of them were German songs she'd never heard of, and she wondered now if Phyllis had given Laurie the impression that she knew more than she did. When she came to a book of Irish songs, they seemed all too silly and old-fashioned and stage Irish, songs that no one sang anymore. At the bottom of the pile were a few single sheets with some of Moore's melodies. She looked at Believe Me, If All Those Endearing Young Charms, but thought it was too stilted. Then she found The Last Rose of Summer. She began studying the notes and humming the familiar tune when Laurie returned to the room. You found something, then? Well, I found this. She handed her the sheet for The Last Rose of Summer. Yes, at an old novice mistress from the Alsace, and I don't know where she learned the phrase, but she used to call me the last rose of summer, even if I was on time. Oh, she was an old battle axe. Near God, I suppose, but an old battle axe nonetheless. Laurie walked into the other room and sat at the piano. Nora followed her uneasily. Now, this is very wrong, Laurie said, and it's bad for your voice. We should do exercises to warm it up and not go straight into a song. But there's something about you now that might not be there in a while. I saw it when you came in the door. You have... What? You've been close to the other side, haven't you? What do you mean? Don't talk now. Let me hear your voice. Let me go through the melody first. She played and then stopped. I'm going to go down an octave and see where that takes us. Laurie played, concentrating on the music, slowing the melody down as she went along. I think I have it now. We really shouldn't be doing this, but your voice might never be as good as it is today. Let me play for a while again, and when I signal, then you come in. She held her hands over the keys, but did not touch them. The silence in the room was so intense that Nora presumed it must really be soundproofed. Laurie remained absolutely still, as though immobilized by something. Nora felt uneasy, almost alarmed by the intensity of the silence, by the need Laurie appeared to have for high drama. Once more, she wished she were elsewhere and resolved that she would not come back here again. She would write to Laurie as soon as she got home to say that she'd made a mistake, that she did now not want to join a choir. Laurie gently touched the keys, working the pedals so that a new low sound came from the piano. She played very slowly, adding strange flourishes, and then she signalled, and Nora, looking at the words of the song, began, "'Tis the last rose of summer, left blooming alone."